and welcome. Katie here. Thanks so much for joining me on the Imagine Crafts YouTube channel. Today I've got a holiday card that is really quick and easy to put together, and I used some all-purpose inks again. I actually liked the color combo that I used on the photo frame so much that I thought I would make it into a card. So let's hop down, and we're going to use some Tropical Lagoon all-purpose inks and some Vegas Gold. I've got some snowflake stamps. This one, I'm not sure if it's still available, so any snowflake stamps you got is perfect to use for this. We're going to use Comfort and Joy from Simon Says Stamp. You can also use your Delicata ink for this, but I thought I would show you some stamping using the all-purpose ink so that you can see how those work. And I've done some pre-die cutting, so we're going to be using some frames, and this is an A2 size card. Don't worry about the schmutz there. We're going to put a watercolor panel over the top, but I went ahead and adhered the frame because thin frames can be a little tricky to deal with. So I went ahead, I have double-sided adhesive when I die cut that, and went ahead and adhered that. I've got another smaller one, or Happy Holidays is on there. That's going to kind of go in the center here. We're going to put a little line of gold strip in the center. We're going to basically make a little package, but we're going to create a background using the all-purpose inks. The sentiment is going to be from Cat Scrappiness, and we're also going to use the shadow die, so we're going to be coloring that also with our all-purpose inks. Let's put this over here. I've got a bow that's going to go on to it, and this is actually an addition it's part of a die set from Lisa Horton in Spellbinders. And I have a little dot that goes with that goes over the top, but now I'm not sure where it went. And then I need that because that's got my little tittle in it. Okay, so the frames, Essentials by Ellen Hudson, the rectangles. If you've got them, I'm using the 5.5 by 4 1/4 side, the biggest one. And then I've got the fourth one down so that you can see which ones. Other than that, there's really no measuring. I trimmed another piece of the gold matte metallic to go in between. So that's what you're measuring. The frames are generally 1/8 of an inch. So this is probably about that, maybe a little thicker, but not that much. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our coloring because we got to get that done before we can do any stamping. Let's get these guys out of the way. Side. I do have a little water, and the watercolor paper I'm using, let's do this little guy first because he's going to need the most time to dry probably. The watercolor paper I'm using is Altenews Hot Pressed. And I'm using the same sponge that I've been because there's no need to cut up another one for what we're doing here because we're really just dyeing the paper. We're coloring the paper. This is just a quick way to do it. Now, I don't have cardstock that matches this Tropical Lagoon. So I'm making my own for the backdrop here for my shadow so that my gold cardstock will pop right off of it. Try and blend that in, stamp right down on it, smush it on there so that it's really saturating this, and that's okay. That's what we want. We want this to be dark so that it will stand out against our backdrop, which will be a little bit lighter. Okay, so let's put this over here because that's pretty saturated. You can see that. That's got to dry. Let's give this a little wipe and get some of this ink up. Some of that off my fingers. Okay, so now this is our main panel. And I am going to just squirt some water down because I'm going to want to thin this. Grab a paper towel. I'm going to thin that a little bit. Downside to those little bottles, they squirt water everywhere. Okay. I'm going to start. I'm going to get this sponge wet because that's going to be critical once I get going. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to go at both ends to color it. And I want this to fade down. And there's a couple ways that you can do this. Now I'm just kind of scrubbing it back and forth to get that color to come down, to lighten it up. Probably going to grab some more water. Give that a shake. And it's okay if you got, you know, your extra sponge that's going to pick up that ink. That's the point. We want it to fade down. I'm going to come in and I'm going to color dark on the other side. And really you can come in any direction you like. You can go this way, you know, the landscape, when you're, you know, if you want it to be, you know, landscape, or if you want it to be portrait. It's all your preference. It's just another way to use the inks that you potentially have. Now, if you don't have these I think are a good dupe to, I think it's the P.H. Martin inks, the one that have the little droppers. Those would work fine too if you have those, because it's, I think, very similar. All right. Nail scratch that. Grab just a little bit more ink. I don't want a ton. And what I'm doing is kind of mushing it back into the bottle so that we have Now, if you find that this might be a little bit too dark, you can take your Fantastic Frost there, right? Nope, Frost White, sorry. And grab my scissors. Clip us a new piece here. Again, this one's going to get a little colored. And you can lighten it up a little bit. Great for a nice winter card. Get that color out of there. Okay. And if you think you've gone a little too far, you can go back over top. All right. Perfect. I like that. I like how that turned out. All right. Just get this picked up. Okay. Now, there's two ways you can do this next part. You can do it on a block, which is what I did here. I always screw around and see how things are going to look, make sure colors are going to go well together before I film a video. That way I know that my idea is actually going to work, because sometimes they don't. So you can see here, I did this by stamping with an acrylic block. Now, the only reason I wouldn't do it again, and I'm going to do it here on the stamp positioner, is one, I'm curious, and two, if I need to deepen up the gold, I need to be able to stamp it again. And I've yet to be able to master stamping twice with an acrylic block. So, whatever you're comfortable with, however dark you want your background to be, is the way to go, whether you're using a stamp positioner or an acrylic block. All right, let's move our sponges up here a little bit. So over here, and I think that'll be good, because, well, let me do a couple dry runs here, because this will be determined. If I need it to be darker, I think that's good. Okay, I'm okay with that. do it like that. I'm trying to think if I rotate it down. Well, we're going to have to figure it out. We might have to replace some things. Okay. And all this is preference, you know, where you want stuff to be placed, how you want it to look. Really, we're just talking technique for the backdrop and stretching out those supplies that you might have to... It's kind of difficult because I'm upside down. To get the most out of the supplies that you might buy and ways to stretch them. Your backdrop could be done with acrylic paint if you want. Doesn't have to be any type of ink like that. Your reinkers, your ink pads, all those are going to work to do this technique. All right. Push these down a little bit. This is the hardest part, getting everything set up. All right, my magnet's pretty thick up there, but okay. Simple. We've got our Vegas gold. Gonna do the same thing, gonna dab off some of that extra, and I'm gonna use my sponge to ink up my stamp. It's okay if it spills in to the center of these. It usually still stamps pretty well where you don't have splotches. But you can kind of go over it a little bit more with your sponge if you feel like you need to try to sop up some of that. Maybe use a different part of the sponge. But having done it a couple of times, I didn't find any real issue. Okay. I think I'm gonna... Now the thing with this ink that I would recommend, have a baby wipe, paper towels, wet washcloth, a pot like you have for, you know, a little pan, that, like when you're using stencils and stuff, to toss your stamps in if you've got photopolymers, or the baby wipes. Just something to keep, to either wipe the ink off or that's wet that lays over the top to keep that ink moist so that you can easily clean it off your stamps. Could do this with gold embossing powder. Lots of options. Okay, so that's double stamping there. That came out pretty good. I like it. Now let's nice and bold. All right, let's see. Okay, we might have a little bit of overlap, but I wonder. We can move this. They don't really need to be on top of each other, and we'll have a couple of spots that we can add hand stamping too. All right. This one we're going to be careful with because we want to make sure we can double stamp it. If you got sponge daubers, you can use those. Sky's the limit. Look like it stayed in place for me, so let's go one more time. Looks good. All right, now let's pick up this ink so we don't lose that. That's another thing you can do if you don't have any gold paint or anything, gold cardstock, or rather, you can use your paints, use your inks and stuff to color your cardstock. I would recommend a few layers, let them dry in between. Okay, I need, let's clean these off real quick. That way I can place them and be able to double stamp. So that's critical here now that we've got double stamping and we got some nice bright gold. And if you ever scrub with your baby wipes and they get little, they kind of, nooks and crannies fill up with the cleaner, just take a sponge and dab them. Get that water off there. That way when you go to re-ink them up with your ink pads, they won't bleed out on you. Alright. Okay. I need, thinking this here. Actually, that probably will balance it out. Do one up there. And I can get rid of all these ones, I think. Because remember, our focus, once we put the frames on, it creates a focal point. So you're not really going to be obsessing over every little open spot on the background. But visually, we do have a couple blanks, so I've got some ink left on this, so I'm going to use that. Alright. Those look pretty good. I don't know if I really need to double stamp them, but let's do it anyway. There. Alright. Now this guy needs to dry a little bit. I like that. That came out sharp. Okay, let's throw a heat gun on it, just so we can move along. And if you're using, you know, Delicata ink or something like that, you probably won't need to hit it with the heat gun at all. Adhesive. Looking good. It didn't smear on the glass. Okay, now this is easy. Since we've got our frame, you know, I had to use this panel to make sure that my frame was lined up. So really, we're just placing it inside. There we go. Okay, now I got adhesive on the back of this. Just gonna peel this release paper. Could probably be a little more gingerly than that, but hey. All right. Let's get our little tittle. A poker. Try to get this release paper off first. Line that in. There we go. Alright, let's grab everything else. You know what, real quick, let me put some adhesive on the back of this. Okay, alright. Next up, get this guy kind of straight so that I'm working. Try and get everything straight. Get our release paper off. Okay. Totally eyeballing it here. Hopefully it's even. Okay, next up. Let's grab this guy here. This, I think, just finishes it off. There. I like it. Not bad. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Be sure and check the description box below for all the products used. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a fantastic day and I'll catch you in the next video.